The case against Mahmoud Khalil has to fail in order for free speech and democracy to thrive, and I think even the most staunch conservative would agree with me. Because think about it like this: if this case succeeds, that means the Secretary of State has the power to deport anyone, lawbreaker or not, so long as they come up with a halfway decent policy reason. And tell me, do you really want little Marco Rubio having all that power? No one likes him. But even though this case is mondo important, and not to spoil it or anything, I do think the government is going to succeed in deporting him, or at best, it's going to be a very long and drawn out legal battle where he will probably be locked up and detained the entire time. And based on where they sent him, the conditions here are atrocious. But like a good student, I want to show my work. There's another video I made where I broke down all the charges levied against him, but here I want to explain the law used against him. So let me go ahead and give you my prediction on how I think things are going to shake up. Basically, in this case, for context, there are two courts. There are the federal court and the immigration court. I'll only discuss the immigration court, and then I'll tell you how I think things will play out in the federal courts later. And for context, immigration court is basically kangaroo court. They play fast and loose with the rules of evidence, and ultimately, it's just a nightmare to be in. And as a friendly reminder, the system's rigged against him. Like, laws are already not favorable towards immigrants, but also keep in mind, ICE likes to play musical chairs with detainees. Like, they will send them across the country. And here, riddle me this: why did someone who got arrested in New York get sent to a detention facility over in Louisiana when there are detention facilities in, like, New Jersey, for example? Basically, ICE placed him in Louisiana, which has judges that are famously against asylum, and they're going to sign that deportation order with a smile. Then the case is going to get appealed. It's going to go all the way to a circuit court, and that circuit has very unfavorable laws towards immigrants. And then it's going to get sent to the Supreme Court where, our Supreme Court, we know who bought them off. We know that they are bought off. Every time I see Clarence Thomas, I just think Mr. Krabs, the way he loves money so much. So let's go ahead and review why I believe an immigration judge is going to sign off on the deportation. First of all, let's go ahead and start off with the charge against him. This is a charge almost never used. The last time it was used was in 1999. Which was against a deputy attorney general in Mexico who there were some extradition issues between the U.S. and Mexico. And as a result, there were very much foreign policy consequences that could have been serious. And that is why this law had to be used. And by the way, the deputy attorney general had entered on a tourist visa. So that is very different from the way it's being applied here. In this case, this is someone who is a green card holder, so definitely different than a tourist visa or someone here on a tourist visa. And this is just a normal everyday citizen. He is a student over in Columbia University. He is nowhere near the level of a deputy attorney general for another country. Therefore, what are the foreign policy consequences here? Because that's what they're arguing. They're saying that there are serious foreign policy consequences if he is not deported. But what? He was just exercising his use of free speech by protesting. That's a First Amendment right that applies to everyone, citizen or not, which is why there are serious First Amendment policy issues here. And that is why it is going to go to a federal court to assess that, because even though that is not the law being used against them, and even though people like little Marco Rubio will say this is not a free speech issue, the way it is being used makes it a free speech issue. And on a side note, if we actually had, constitutional originalists or textualists like Antonin Scalia, they would have been heavily against this. They would have spoken out against this, not to go back and make him seem like a hero or anything, because he was not. But at least back then, they pretended to care about morals and actual principles, whereas now it's very blatantly about money. But tangent aside, back to the matter at hand. The last time this charge was used was in a case called Matter of Riz Masu. And in that case, they had said that there has to be good faith evidence of foreign policy consequences, and that evidence had to be, or that the good faith level of it had to be clear and unequivocal. Here, personally, I don't think it meets that standard, and that's what we would argue. This is not being done in good faith. They are just targeting a civilian, just a normal everyday person, not a foreign official or anything, for protesting. And what foreign policy consequences does that have? Oh, he spread literature? Show the literature, especially if he gave it away to so many people to the point where it's going to have foreign policy consequences. Show us. but they don't want to show it. You know why. And so, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of faith in this case because law, policy, ideology, that is a human centipede that is connected all the way, just a Ouroboros of BS that ultimately is being used and weaponized against civilians now. And this is just a stress test on our democracy. So they are placing him in a area, in a circuit, in a state where this is most likely to get denied and most likely for him to be deported for the sake of removing him and making an example out of him. This is going to ultimately stifle free speech, or at the very least, like really, really dissuade dissenters.